Welcome to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I am Juliette Hahn. I'm here with my co-host, Brent Sopel, and we are here to change the narrative. We want to educate, but we also want you guys to understand what it is like to be dyslexic and how things can change. So join us every week for Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. Welcome back to Word Blindness. I'm Juliette Hahn here with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you?
Another day in paradise. Raining. Monday. I think is it Monday? I don't even know anymore.
It is Monday. Okay. And you know what? And the thing that's kind of funny is that here in New York, this is the first week of school. And so this episode's not going to go out for a couple of weeks. So people are going to, be a little bit behind, but as they catch up, we all have just gone through the last month of first week of school. And it's brought up a lot of stuff, right? It's brought up a lot of stuff. It's first of all brought up, I always forget how much anxiety I get around the first week of school. And I always, it's kind of ridiculous that it actually creeps up. I think some years I'm a little bit more prepared and my anxiety starts 2 weeks before. And then this year, right. So I'm like aware of it. I'm like, okay, I'm anxious, but it brings up a lot of stuff that we are talking about. So many different things. The anxiety that you remember when you were a kid is one thing. So your own shit, right? And then if you have a child that also has learning differences, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, ADHD, whatever it is, then you are getting the anxiety that maybe they don't even realize they have, but that you feel. And then it's like this whole shitstorm starts to happen. And Brent has been very lucky to hear mine.
Yeah, my phone literally, it's funny how spread out school starts from, obviously across North American, individuals that I speak from, obviously from God's country. So it's been about a month now of people going back to school. I think here in Illinois, it was the second week of August, so it's been a month now of my phone, blowing up, my email blowing up, my text message blowing up from, from the anxiety, from, parents, the frustration, the scaredness and from kids, just every mix of emotion. Because again, we're walking into a place that we despise.
Yeah.
It's, all right, do I want to do something fun or something I hate? Oh, can I go do something I hate for 8 hours? Please, yay.
It's so true. But the thing is that it does bring such a point up because you have been getting calls. I happen to be one of them this past week, which I was like, oh, I'm prepared. But it also reminds me because, I was like, yeah, I got this, we're good. And then all of a sudden it was not good. But the thing that's interesting, and I always kind of forget, but this is a message that this is so important for parents to hear, is that the more, and it's not prepared because I don't want to say that, but the more that you can advocate for your child and the more that you're on top of it, kind of as it's starting, the less anxiety it could bring. Now, it might not, because I thought I was on top of it. and then I wasn't. And then I was like, oh my gosh, because last year, and I think I don't think I shared this part with you, but I think I've shared it with you before. Last year, before my son started, he emailed all the teachers. He's like, this is a huge year for me. I just want to let you know I'm dyslexic. So whatever support you can give us would be really helpful. They all emailed him back. They were all very thankful. This year we didn't do it because I forgot again that there was a couple new teachers in the mix, but I figured someone would have talked. They know this, whatever. This kid has been in the school for 4 years, but it's like a slap in the face every year because it's like, no, they don't. So thank goodness he advocates for himself and he went and talked to the teachers before. And then you and I were talking about IEPs and when the teachers read the IEPs. So I'm going to let you jump in.
What are we talking? Assumptions death, right?
Yes.
And you said that, I assume they talk, let's just clarify something. None of them talk, we have to revisit this every single year. You can't, let your guard down or, whatever the right terminology is. We have to do this every single year. That IEP that you just talked about is, obviously you have that IEP. I worked on one this weekend for a lady. You need to rewrite an IEP for your kid and how you see that kid needs its help. So obviously we're going to go down on the IEP with the doctor terminology, the legal ramification, all that stuff. But there needs to be another page. What does your kid need? What does that mean? Remember, you're talking to somebody who doesn't know what ADHD is, doesn't know what dyslexia is. So, I wrote one this weekend. And yeah, they don't get them 2 weeks before. They don't get the IEPs, a day before. We're a week, we're 2 weeks in, we're 3 weeks in some places, and the teachers still haven't gotten IEPs. So, as parents, yes, it sucks. Yes, we have to relive it every day, and we bury it thinking we're okay. But, as you thought. But it's, you have kids and you're like, as they get older, it's always hard, just different hearts. My kids are still, my youngest is 19 in college. It's still hard in different ways. It never gets easy, but the more we can be prepared and it's understanding, the more we can get the teachers to understand our kids. And remember, they're new every year, every class. So you have to teach them about your kid. You can't count on, the special ed system or the principal to go, because they're not going to do justice for your kid. Only you can advocate for your kid the best until maybe high school or later on, senior year, grade 12, grade 11, somewhere there where they're strong enough and okay with who they are to advocate for themselves. But parents, we're all in this together. You're not the only one struggling. Her and I spent a lot of time on the phone, this past couple of weeks is with that anxiety. So it's the more we can talk about it, the more you can be educated. That's why we do this, is to give you insight in different ways that most people don't. So when you walk in that classroom or that school, that you have all that information. First one, you're okay, you're comfortable with it. Now, then your kid's going to be. Now we have to make teachers that don't understand what we are, and most of them don't have learning disorders. And most of them never struggled at school, so they're happy-go-lucky walking in that classroom. They just had 2 months off, and they enjoy school. Now you have to teach them about who your kid is.
Right. And I love how you laid that out, because the thing is, again, most teachers, and I want to say most, are doing the best that they can. They get all of these, they're waiting for people to give them stuff. They're waiting to read things, but it is frustrating as a parent being like, I can't understand. We're 3-4 days in and you still haven't read the IEP. So this kid that's in front of you, you're assuming, right? We talked about assumption, because assumption is death, assuming this is how this kid is. And if the kid doesn't say to you, hey, this is my, my background, the teachers are going to assume. They're going to be like, okay, this kid seems fine. He doesn't, because again, remember, you can't see dyslexia.
Yeah. And then one page of an IEP from a parent will be easier to read than a 50-page IEP. And that's why I also say that. So they can look at that and read that quick and have an understanding, before school starts, or and not be, because if they get handed a packet this way, what happens for us if somebody hands us this much paper?
Yeah,
go fuck yourself. I ain't reading that.
Right. And it's so true. So it also, the teachers do appreciate it. I mean, I remember last year, again, teachers all being like, thank you so much, to my son. Thank you so much for telling us and letting us know, because now we're going in understanding. So the first day they were like, okay, this is the kid that I know I'm going to get his IEP soon. And I don't want to say shame on us, because I don't want to do that, because we didn't do it this year, because again, I just was like, okay, I'm ahead of it, but I'm not ahead of it. And then it literally on Saturday, I didn't move off the couch. I was so exhausted, and it was emotionally exhausted is what it was. And it sucked. It sucked.
It's, not shame on you. You know, we'll go down this little Peter Cottondale rabbit hole. Is that obviously with Montgomery, you've had college. You've had a lot going on, and you doing this. We've had a lot of conversations about a lot of hard topics, and it all revolves around this stuff. So you thought you were, and you're trying to bury it. You're trying to hide it, right? And think, I'm good. I'm good. Oh, really? Oh, okay. And that's okay. It's when you struggle with learning disorders, it's always going to be a scary place. It's always going to be a hard place. And then you take it on for your kids and you just hope and pray and hope it's going to be okay. And that's what you're trying to do. And you're trying to, hide it and put it in the can behind you and, and sit on and kick it to the curb. And that's okay. It's, emotionally exhausting. Yeah. So the more that we can do these little things, first, parents know every single year you have to go in and you have to speak with, I shouldn't say you have to go in, either an email or go in. You have to, you got to make it part of your routine. And, think of us, think of kids, how the first day, anxiety, first week, teachers are going to have some of that, obviously in a different form, knowing if I'm a middle school teacher or from a high school, and now I got 60 classes, I got 9,000 people to meet and learn and understand and teach. And that's just a lot for me to stay, and the thought of that just brings me anxiety in itself. It's, somebody asked me to play a board game. My God, my anxiety goes through the roof. So, flip that as a teacher. So, it never goes away. We need to know as parents to make that our routine. And that's what I was meaning by that, the 1-page IEP or 2-page in your words, they're going to read that. And a lot
this is how you can help my kid. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, then not that, so they're going to be thankful too, because it's going to make their job easier. So the more that we can, do that, if that's an email, just know beginning of every year is a new year for you as parents, as teachers, new drop off line, new signs, moms, new dads to look good for, it's, every year is a new year, and it's, it's not going to change. So don't try and change that. And that's what you were trying to help your way through it, and they hit you in the side of the head, and it's okay.
Yeah, day one, day one, I was like, okay, but that's the thing. I mean, it's always, again, and you brought up a lot of really good points, because the thing is, even if your kid, as you said, if they're older, senior, they've been doing this, it's like, okay, you forget that also, and they might not be wanting to express their anxiety, but when you do have a learning disability, you're like, in your head, you're thinking, okay, what teachers am I going to have? What teachers are going to get me? What teachers am I going to be able to work with? Who's in my class? Who's going to be able to support me? Who am I going to be able to go to when I miss something? And all of these different things. And, my child would never admit that this is what goes on in his head, but I can feel it. And then because I'm an empath and I take it, and, and all of us obviously want the best for our children. Some of us probably internalize a little different, especially ones that maybe have gone through the same situation. And then I can just feel it. And I remember what I used to do before going into a new year, even though I was excited because I would see my friends, but then the whole realization of like, okay, is this teacher going to work with me? Are they not going to work with me? Am I going to feel dumb? What's going to happen? It all is like this snowball effect.
I don't know. There's fun. I hate it. The thought of going to school every day was kind of miserable.
I know. Because I was like, miss social. So I just wanted to see my friends. I was happy to see my friends, but really, all, the learning stuff, it was like, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And it's getting back in that whole routine. Yeah, it is.
And don't think you're alone. That's the whole thing.
Yes, exactly.
And the older the kids get, the more they carry things. It's my friends. Am I in that classroom with my friends? Are in my kid? So you had the list of teachers and all that. Then you get your friends involved, and you have social involved, and
it's a lot.
It's a lot for everybody. So don't think you're alone. In obviously we spoke a lot over the last 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever that is. It's okay. Again, you're not alone. Parents, we all fight this same beginning of the year anxiety, just as your kids have, we have. And the biggest thing is that you're not alone.
And to get ahead of things if you can. And that is like as you said, write the IEP, send the teacher a message, have your kid be able to advocate for themselves. But I mean, what was funny is, and not funny, like not haha funny. It was like,
there any other
annoying funny? Well, right. Funny, like in peculiar, let's just say. I came to you and I was like, okay, I just had a friend that their daughter just started college, ADHD, dyslexia, and my friend's does not have it. It's more on her husband's side. And she came to me talking to me about the executive functioning. She's like, oh my gosh, she's melting. And then I, of course, went back to like my freshman year and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, let me give you some tips. But that was like, it was so much. Then I had another person come to me, then my situation, and then you came to me with like 3 different people. And I was like, I mean, it makes you also understand. And when you talk to other people, like you are not alone. And I think that's what, and such an important message. As we've talked about it in many different podcasts. I mean, we've talked about the IEP. We've also talked about the self-advocating. We've also talked about feeling alone on an island, right? I mean, we've talked about all of these different things and we've touched on them, but it comes full circle the first week of school.
And, and then, that rewriting that IEP for your kid, every year, that's how you can start, every year, depends on where you are. You go from elementary to middle. Not where I'm from. We go to kindergarten, grade 8. But anytime you go into a new building, it's new anxiety. So it's each step. Now, when you go from high school to college, that's where executive functioning really comes into play, because now you moved away from home and you've got to do this all on your own. And I moved away at 16, so all you luckies got a couple extra years at home. But and truly, how many of us are ready at 18? They think they're ready. I mean, they save the world every day. They tell you, how much they know, right? But truly they are. So it's having these conversations, knowing what's coming. And that's why we do this podcast. And, we talked about, maybe an app, a platform to have these conversations with, on a regular basis, because it's things you don't think of. Executive functionings, you manage them under your house. Now you just had, ADHD. Most people don't even know the whole definition, why dopamine, we can think of anything, but can we get going to do it? Mm-hmm. So now you put your kid who has ADHD in college. What? Where do we go? Oh, I got to run for this, rush and fight and party and go there. What? No. So I always say they're in a blender. So we have to put ourselves, we help them through those times. We help them cross the finish line at home. But we just sent them off because I think, the people you're talking about from California and, she's in Boston. So it's just not a, drive to the corner and pick her up and hold her hand and get her going to class or getting here to organized, or how many of them daughters' rooms are complete hurricane disasters and can't get them to clean it. I'm like, So it's these things that you don't think of. But they never go away. So they graduate from college. All right, now they go to get a new job. Now they're maybe moving to a new city. Holy shit. Now I got an apartment. Now I got to be this adult thing. I got bills and I got this and that, so it's the more that we communicate this, have these conversations and know every step and every phase, into a new building, this is going to come up in different ways, in different times.
And the executive functioning, because that's always a piece that people will be like, I don't even know what that is. And so I always explain it as, you have, 10 rooms in your house and every single room is a disaster. And you just stand there and you're like, where do I start? Where do I start? And it's that starting. And that really comes with attention deficit. Like that is, it's getting the start. And that's where people will be like, you're lazy, you're not working, you're not trying. But it's actually your brain shutting off because there's too much to do. And that's when anxiety happens, right? When you can't, be like, I don't even know where to start. And this is what it always brings down to when you have a child with executive functioning that maybe is learning math. You don't put 12 problems on a page. You put, one or two, because that's how they'd be able to break it down. And they don't teach executive functioning in public school. I mean, and that's the thing. It's not something that's taught, and it is something that is essential for everyone. Anyone, even without attention deficit, can learn how to do executive functioning better. If that's correct.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they don't teach it because they don't understand it. They don't really know what that, that isn't a terminology or a word that comes up. Now, in our world with ADHD, that's, that's everything. I always talk about my life's in a blender, buttons on high. But we were talking yesterday, people with ADHD under pressure situations, what happens?
Right. And pressure, not test pressure. So let's go.
So let me be clear. I will never talk about test pressure because I ain't talking about school. So where I saw somewhere is that, and you've said it to me, like, how the hell do you handle all this? The more you have on your plate, the more pressure you have at a job or family situations, or somebody ill or things like that. Our brain actually creates the hormones that calms us down. Mm-hmm. Most people, obviously, you would do the opposite. So, in high pressure situations, we calm down. That's why we're able to handle more. But that's where we don't have our executive functioning, because that, we're in there under that pressure and we're creating different hormones and anxiety or neurons that are firing to calm us down, to be able to make good decisions. That's why a lot of us like that under pressure. I think you said that yesterday, right?
Skydiving, all these things. But this is the other thing that's really interesting is like, I have always been the type of person that I do better when if I procrastinate and then I have like something I have to do. Like, I mean, I used to do this in school. I would wait. And then when it was like, you had no time, I would do it and I would get it done. And so it's me self kind of regulating, because I would be trying to get that kind of that dopamine, that like, the adrenaline to be like, boom, I can go. But I mean, is it healthy? I mean, it works in some senses.
And that's what, so ADHD is based, we don't get our dopamine, on a regular basis. We don't have dopamine. I always say ADHD is a kitchen faucet. Our faucet is off with dopamine. Everybody else's, it's flowing. And how do we turn it on? Sex, drugs, rock and roll. We need that adrenaline, to turn it on. But this, it's not even dopamine that we get when we're in very high pressure situations. I don't remember what it's called. It's another another hormone that we create under those high pressures. So you're talking about skydiving. That's getting our dopamine. That's
so this
rock
is
and roll. So it's once, and that's where we high pressure right to the end. You procrastinate. All right, then we get crazy because then we turn our little kitchen sink on for our dopamine. That's why we bounce off walls, we do stupid things. We're finding a way to turn on that dopamine.
Mm-hmm. No, and that was a very interesting video, because it was, and I wonder, really, if you think about different careers, how many, if you break it out, like we talked about NASA, right? That 50% of women and men that are in NASA are dyslexic. And so if you think about different kind of jobs and careers out there, it would be so fascinating to kind of break it down and see like, okay, how much are ADHD? How much are this or how much are that? Because I mean, I'm sure some of those high pressure, like firemen, or like things that you have to like walk on the, things that are like crazy. I bet I would bet money on it that if you took a kind of a cross section, that there would be a high number of ADHD in some of those really high pressure jobs.
Well, yes, and this will play off, in a couple ways. My buddy, 18 years in Marines, he's dyslexic. He's like 30 to 40, if not more, are dyslexic. So we work with our hands. So the jobs that you just talked about are high pressure, strength based, right? Ego based, not this based. Mm-hmm. So how many of those firefighter, Marines, things like that, where they went to because they couldn't use this, they had to use this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's always, those things are fascinating to me because it really is. And, I'm going to dig and do a little research and see if there's anything out there, because it is, I mean, those are the kind of things that people also don't think about. And that's where, the other thing that we have talked about a lot in the last couple of weeks are, okay, the seniors that are graduating, right? That maybe school is not for them. And yes, if college is for you for different reasons, if college is not, if you want to play athletics in college, but the pressure that these kids get, that it's like, if you do not go to college and you don't know what you want to do, what's wrong with you? And really, we've talked about this on the podcast, because how many 18-year-olds actually know what they want to do? There's such a small percentage. And so college is a lot of times a place for them to find themselves. And if you're not going to college, it's like, you got to get right into that workforce because that's what's expected for you. But you're like, okay, I'm flailing, I'm lost because I don't know what I want to do.
Expected, assumption. Again, you're right. We talk about this all the time, is that your path is your path, right or wrong. If you're 4 years old, never been married, single, okay, that's your path. Everybody talks about, how many women, I got to get married at 24, I got to have kids, this, no, fuck off. Whatever works for you works. So maybe college does for somebody. Maybe college doesn't. Maybe that's a trade. Maybe that's starting your own business. We're in such a mode that society, go fuck yourself. You've never lived a day in my shoes. You've got no idea what goes on. So it's being comfortable with who you are, and whatever that path is. It's okay if you're 18, you know what you want. Awesome. If you're 18, you don't know what you want. I'm 47, I still don't know what the hell I want. Right? Right. And it's okay. Kids are like, oh, I don't know. It's okay. You're 18.
But the pressure of school, yeah. But the pressure of school is like, this is what this is where you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to be. And again, right, society, you're supposed to be married at this time. You're supposed to be having kids at this time. And it's interesting how there's generational, you think, okay, it's changed a little bit, but then you talk to someone that kind of spews something that you thought has really gone away. And you're like, wait, what do you mean? No, you're 23. You don't need to be thinking about getting married and having kids and the path is not going to happen, right? I mean, that's the thing. Most of us, the path that we thought we were going to be on, if we ever did it, it's usually not, but you have to you have to kind of go with it. As you said, you have to be comfortable with who you are to be able to follow the path that you're meant to be going on and following and be comfortable. And again, there's going to be times in your life where you're not comfortable. When you're 18, you just graduated high school and you're like, okay, I'm not going to college. Now you're not comfortable. Right. But do you know what I mean? It's tough. It's tough. And so you just have to give yourself grace and just be like, I gotta, what do we always talk about? Like anxiety and all of that stuff happens when you think you can control something and you can't. And we talk about this I mean, you've said this to me, but it's also funny because my listeners that will listen to this and my other podcast will be like, but you always say that. And we all forget sometimes. We're all
better coaches than players.
Right. Exactly. You can't control the things you can't control. Yeah. So if you sit there and dwell and are like, well, how can I control this? How can I control this? There's so many things that are out of our control and we just have to let them be and not make ourselves crazy trying to control them because it's never going to work.
No. And That's why I talk about, strengths and weaknesses, right? Miss Happy and Miss Positive. I do this for a reason. Because if you can't look at something and know, hey, I'm great at something, I've been told I'm great, then I fail and I'm all the way down. So, instead of, okay, I'm not very good at this, but I'm great at this. That's why I talk about that, as such. And, when we start finding out, we're dyslexic or ADHD, whatever we have, it's okay. We all have strengths and weaknesses. We got to love ourselves. And that's what, is the biggest thing in the world right now that I find. It's how many people, they want to get married or they want to do this. You don't even love yourself. So if you don't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else? So it goes back to you being okay with who you are and whatever that path brings. Did I think I'd be sitting here when I won the cup in 2010? Absolutely not. But that's the path that that's been part of my journey, and here I am today, and love every bit of it. It's brought me here and who I am today. So it's being okay. It's when you're not okay with who you are and what you are, is then when you let society dictate that. How many marriages were, I'm supposed to be married, so I'm going to go get married. How many jobs you want? Yeah. I'm supposed to have this job, and the timeline, and this is what goes next. What timeline? I didn't even know what I'm doing in 10 minutes. Living for the moment. And until you're okay with who you are, you never will be. And that, that's the biggest thing. And obviously in your house, you guys have known what dyslexia is for years and years. And that's why, I always say, you're positive, I'm negative. There's not enough, in the world, it hasn't been enough time, enough understanding of what all this means to be okay with it. And that's why I talk about, is all this is the information and understanding of we're okay. We have to know we're okay. We have to learn. You can't be okay with anything till you have all the information. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to do.
And you're a little bit more of a realist. I like that better than negative. You're a realist.
You say negative.
See, there's my positive side. Positive and realist.
Glasses half full. But yeah, I just call it. I call it the way people don't like. I'll say it. I just call it the way it is. Some people don't like it. I'm smooth like sandpaper, but it is what it is.
No, but being a realist, and again, I'm positive in certain ways, but there are things that I am a realist. There's things that I'm like, okay, I know this, but I do, and my teenagers love that I can always find the positive in every situation. But that's also the way that a lot of times it gets me through. I get through because
glass half full or half empty, 100%. You should have your little unicorn hat on all the time because it's awesome. Why me? Nobody wants to hang out with that person. That's right. That negative side. So, it's obviously proven, in philosophy that, that positive side, I think I can. Thomas Train, 1,000,000%. Your brain is the most powerful thing. So, that's a great trait. It means you're okay with who you are. And that's kind of what you're going back to. You're okay with who you are. And you're able to see that positive side because you have the information of yourself.
Right. And again, and this is where I'm going to take it full circle again, but this is where it's so important to know how you learn, how your child learns. And this is why the neuropsych, when you can get all of the answers, and you guys have heard us, this is like a thread that we talk about all the time, but with podcasts, sometimes people just catch one episode. And so we always want to talk about that. If your child is struggling or you think they're struggling, or the teacher has said, oh, you know what, they're a boy, so they're a slow learner, or they haven't grown yet. There's certain things that people will say that it's not true. If you have any learning disabilities in your family, even if you don't, because Brent, you didn't know, right? You had no idea until you were 32. When your daughter was diagnosed, you were like, oh, wait, okay, this is interesting. So you're not going to know. But the second you're like, you know what, there's something not right. things are not connecting, especially if you have other siblings and it's like, oh, wait, this, Johnny learned to read easier. Timmy is struggling here. I wonder what's going on. It's not because Timmy's a summer birthday. Yes, there is some of that true, but it usually is because there's something a little bit more underlining. So the fact that you go and get that neuropsych, do not count on the school to do it. And again, I have family that is teachers. I respect teachers. I've had my love-hate relationships with certain, teachers, and anyone that's listening that has been through my path through my kids or myself know that, because again, I am positive, but once, something is done wrong and wrong again, I will go mama bear. But it is important to get that information and go outside the school to get the neuropsych and get on a list, because you don't know how long it takes and all that. Well, but the more you know.
And we just talked about the teachers not getting the information, right, to start school. So now if you want to wait and count on the school when they can't get that information out, so how long do you think this takes?
Oh, it takes forever. Because we did both. We went through the school and then we went outside, because it was, again, and certain states, they don't say dyslexia. They say reading disorder, or they just say LD, learning disability. And that doesn't help anyone.
Well, that again, you're right. But look who's on top. I spent a lot of time in Washington, they don't know they don't have it. So you expect them to go and write a certain language. They don't even know what the hell it is. So how can we expect them to go and write, dyslexia or, so you're absolutely right. But that goes back to the education. Why are they going to go and take some turn over some terminology that they don't know? So we got it again back to what? Education.
Right. Well, and I've shared this when we were in Connecticut, you were able to have every diagnosis, and it was great. We had like this IEP, and again, I've talked about Montgomery was very fortunate that he was able to go to a school specifically for dyslexia for a little while. Then we moved to New York, and it was like the first time I got the IEP, I was like, "You're kidding! You're absolutely kidding me!" Like I came with like the best IEP because we came from a dyslexic program and they explained everything. And we had this awesome doctor that literally like laid out the strengths and the weaknesses, where a lot, it's like, this is the deficit. This This doctor was amazing. I love Dr. Tim Heitzman. If you ever listen to this, he was so good. And one of the best. And he laid out all of the strengths and the weaknesses, and then what should be laid out in a program. And we came with all of that. And it was a lot. And it went down to like 2 pages, and it was diagnosis, LD. And I literally went in and I'm like, you guys have to be kidding me. And they're like, no, we loved reading. Like, that was really thorough IEP, but this is what we're allowed here because of the law. And I was like, and that's again, where you have to go to the teacher and you need to lay it out. So again, it brings it back to the beginning of the conversation. You have to do your own IEP. And I know some of you might be listening, but like, we can't, because that's a law. You can do a 2-page email that is your own IEP. There's the 504 and all those different things that you can do that lay it out, that the teacher understands, okay, this is how this child learns. This is the recommendations from, the parent from all the years, because we know our kids the best. Yeah. And they're going to thank you. Really. It's not going to be like, you're going to have some teachers that are going to be like, well, I have to go off of this. And, the
IEP, you got to do it. I say rewrite it, something I should probably use better terminology is, put it in your words. It's not it's not rewriting it. That IEP is there, and it has to be there for the services through legally. So it's rewriting that journal into, like you just said, a page or 2 in your words. So it's his strengths or weaknesses. The one I did yesterday was I did a header and then bulletproof. Was all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, needs this. Can't have this, and this. Can't be graded on this, and, so straight to the point. Obviously, we don't write sentences or paragraphs. It's just, how we write anyway.
But those bullets are the best. Because again, and it all goes back to that self-esteem. You have a teacher that loves that red marker that circles all your, misspellings. I remember where and then they don't read, right? You have your first assignment. Someone maybe didn't get to the IEP yet, and they go and they circle everything and they tell the kid, you got to work on your spelling. And then the kid is like, shrinks because it's like, well, I can't spell. I mean, I still can't spell. I spell like a second grader. We've gotten into that in the first couple episodes. So it is.
Now, are we going to go down that rabbit hole now too, or is this later with the dysgraphia stuff?
No. I mean, I want to talk about the dysgraphia. No, but so that's the thing. But that's why it's important. Be quiet. That's why it's important to get all of that in front, because the teacher needs to know before your kid gets their self-esteem dinged and dinged and dinged. And so, yes, please bring up the dysgraphia stuff, because that's what is so, again, those are things that a lot of people don't understand.
No, and that's why, go back to the rewriting your kid's IEP. I had somebody reach out to me saying they wanted to get extra help with their daughter's dysgraphia. And I'm like, you got time to talk? Let me try to understand a little bit more what you're trying to do. And then after school, some extra resource to work on the writing, getting there, because they're in grade 5, I think they're now. It's bad that, the teachers marking them off on the spelling, on the neatness, and kids are laughing. So I said, well, stop right. Dysgraphia, the writing portion of dyslexia, will never get better, ever. So this is where I refer to as rewriting. That is, no kid should ever be marked or graded off their, writing, printing, whatever you want to call it.
It's called penmanship.
We'll just keep on going, because I'll take that penmanship and so so the teacher needs to know that is, maybe in the younger years, are they doing a paragraph to take home for the day, or opening set, whatever that. No, that kid can't do it, cannot be graded on. Will never get better. So you can go to all the resource you want for all the time and money for your penmanship to get better. It's not. It's dysgraphia is a fine motor skill. It doesn't get better. So it's taken to the teacher. Kid can't get graded on printing. Notes, if there's notes on the board, the teacher has to give it to the kid. No note taking. And he could pretend, like he's taking notes, so other kids, don't say anything. Example, never get taken out of a classroom to write a test in a different room. Then why are you leaving? Then now you're, now you got, it's all these little things that teachers don't know. When I spoke to the woman, she's like, everything I said to her, she didn't really have anything to say, because it was like, what the fuck? You always think, you're printing to get better, neater, write neater. No, that's what we have. It's now knowing that, being okay with that, and putting our kids in the best place for that. And that's educating the teacher on what that is. So that's, it was the dysgraphia portion of the IEP that I wrote. They're like, oh, wow, I had no idea. It's, and you can't expect a teacher to know. And if you're a parent, you don't have it, you don't either, so that's, that was yesterday, obviously. That's why you talk about it. That's why, if you want to call it realist, I know the thought of the kids sitting in classrooms right now struggling. I know, like I said, somebody says, let's play a board game. The anxiety I get from that, that's sitting in a classroom for 8 hours. I am the way I am because of, all these. I coach the way I do is because of all these struggles. And, I bring things up. You always say, people are like, how do you know that? When you live on this side of the fence, it's who I'm supposed to be, but it ain't easy.
Yeah.
When it takes 10 minutes to do a goddamn email, or never mind email, the email address.
No, totally. But I want to, and I also do want to clarify because there's people out there, they're going to be like, no, well, if you can strengthen the fine motor skills, it's going to get better. And so I mean, we went through this when we were in Connecticut. And it's again, the strengths and weaknesses. And I remember fighting with them. I'm like, just stop. It's not going to get better. Now, there are certain situations. The classroom is not one. When things are coming at you, your handwriting is going to be really bad because you're trying to interpret it. You're trying to write it down. And that's where the dysgraphia comes in. If you're sitting down to write a note, a thank you note, let's just say, it might be neater than when you're in class. And so there are times, but just like all of us, right? My handwriting's neater at sometimes when I'm tired, it's less neat. But with dysgraphia, it's this misnomer that actually makes me a little bit crazy because I argued with the OT when we lived in Connecticut because this was more new to me, the dysgraphia. My dad and my sister are dysgraphic. I just have shitty, when I call it like the dyslexic handwriting, I just have kind of messy handwriting, but that's different than having having dysgraphia. It's very, very different. Mm-hmm. And dysgraphia is its own
chicken scratch.
It's chicken scratch. Exactly. And we talked about, like, my dad said he learned cursive. That's all he can write because the cursive, you don't pick it up. And so there's this whole thing. And I said to you, I'm going to look into that a little bit more because they stopped teaching that. Right. So for kids that are dysgraphic, there are certain things that you can do. But there's also, I mean, I remember the vision therapy. There's so many things that the schools and everyone tells you to do that you're like, okay, I'm going to do this because if this helps, this helps. Yeah. And it really doesn't. And it is one of the things, stop throwing it down the child's throat. Like, okay. And you can't grade it. And so and think about that. How many times are you writing and reading in school? And if those are the two things that you struggle at, just put yourself in that situation, which is really, really tough. And so then you're getting taken out because it's like, okay, we're going to work on your fine motor skills to help with the dysgraphia, or we're going to help you type, because that's the other thing. There is a movement that typing is easier. And yes, I'm sure for some dysgraphic kids, it is, not for all, because then there's the other learning disabilities that come into effect that actually, it comes into. But the importance of not cutting, like, it's a very specific handwriting, someone that's dysgraphic. It's not just messy handwriting. So like a teacher needs to be like, wait a second, this is a little bit different. And I mean, I've talked to so many parents that will be like, I didn't know what that was. I never heard of it because it's not something that is talked about as much. Dyslexia is probably a little bit more mainstreamed, and people know ADHD is a little bit more known. Dyscalculia and dysgraphia are two that a lot of people don't understand. The dyscalculia is the math, like dyslexic math. Basically, it's, so some people are not dyslexic, awesome, but they're dyscalculia. I know, I just got exhausted.
But, and that's so I tell people, the normal people, I'm like, how many times a day do you read? I'm like, yeah, try struggling every time. How many times do you write? Try struggling.
It's exhausting.
So, yeah, big time. So it's, that teacher, when you walk in that school, you know that you're that kid. So the less you can be, have your kid being that kid in a class by, like, for an example, getting pulled out of a certain class to go and work on your fine motor skills, or to leave the classroom to go write, a test because you get extra time, or your test read to you. All those things need to be done before school or after school. Yes, is it extra time? Yes, but you do not want to be, hey, where are you going? Hey, dummy. Oh, you're dumb. You got to go somewhere else, because that's exactly what it's going to be. So yes, you're going to have to get up there earlier, maybe write the test earlier or after school. Does it make things tougher? It does. It does. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but that's your kid. Just like no standing in front of class, no going up to the board, no reading out loud to the class. These are traumas that I live with still today.
No, it's true. And still my child gets taken out. But this is the other thing, is it for tests and stuff. But I think again, this goes back to knowing your child, because there's going to be some kids that might be like, I'd rather take the test there. I don't want to come early. I'd rather take it at a different place. But that kid knows how they learn and they're more comfortable with it, right? Because maybe it's been happening the whole time, and all kids have different personalities. This is what we talked about. The innate confidence versus not. I love what you said though, doing it after school or before, because it is something that's like, I mean, there's so many different things. Also the verbal, I mean, still our district they don't do it verbal, and he would ace things verbal, but nope, it's still, we have to do it this way.
That's what I did.
And I thought,
all tests need to be verbal. So I know they're going to be looking like what, and when I say don't get pulled out, the older you are, usually, in high school, no big deal, because people are coming in and out. It's
in and out.
I'm referring to, like say maybe, let's just say grade 6, where they're not in middle school, where they're only in that classroom. So when you leave, you're leaving with a big sign on your back. So that's what I'm referring to. So if whatever works for your kid, absolutely. It's trying to get that target off them. Wherever you can do that is, and however that, maybe that you're in grade 4, they're okay with, with leaving. Absolutely. I just don't, it's that target that I want to keep off kids' back.
No, and it's so true. And I mean, it really brings a good point up, because I think people probably don't think, okay, they could do it after, they could do it before. Because again, it's the extra time for the teacher, it's the extra time for the district. But the district is also going to tell you, oh no, we can't do that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into arguments because I'm like, okay, why can't you do that? There's gray area. Nope, it's black and white here. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it's not. But this is again where you have to fight for your kid. And however you have to do that, you have to fight for your kids, because if it's going to save them self-esteem, it's going to save them a little bit of pride, save them something.
I'll come beat their asses.
It's worth that fight.
Again, to reference, see this rabbit hole, is they're going to tell you everything's black and white. It's this way. But remember, the person that you're speaking to, at the district, whoever that is, or whatever that, they have no idea what you're talking about. They don't have it. Same way when I talk about going to see a counselor, if that counselor hasn't had the same traumas that you have, it's not going to work. They're gaslighting. So they don't know what you're talking about. You're talking Chinese to them. So they're just going to say, here's the protocols, because they have no idea what you're talking about. So know that don't listen to them, and whatever it takes, you need to do that for your kid.
But the other thing that's really important too, because they are going by a system, and it always comes back. And we talked about this, I think it was in the last one, or the episode 2 or 3, where even if your kid's the most likable kid, you're the most likable family, everyone loves you. When they're putting together schedules and doing things, they're not looking at the kid. And it's like time and time again where you're like, wait a second, I can't believe that you guys didn't look at the makeup of the class.
You're
you still put, you're a number. And they're trying to figure out your schedule. Like, okay. And this is what I'm talking when your kids are older, in high school, they're looking at the schedule. Okay. He has to take this class, or she has to take this class. So how can we work around this class? And they're not, again, thinking of the makeup of this class and your kid. So, and then there's teachers sometimes that don't understand learning disabilities, and they talk to you like you're an idiot. I just literally had to get into it with our district because this has happened. And again, you can't see dyslexia. You can't see dysgraphia unless it's on the piece of paper, but you can't see it. And it's not an IQ thing. We talk about this all the time. A lot of times dyslexic, dysgraphic, my screen's blurry.
1, 2, 3, those numbers, that's your kids. They don't know who you are. They don't know boys or girls. That's all. We're a number or a piece of meat,
Right. And it's harsh. It's harsh and it's sad. But again, I've learned the hard way, because my kid is likable. I think I'm likable, but I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm a pretty likable person. I'm very positive. But they don't care. Just keep laughing. They don't care. And sometimes it's really hard to understand that. And you think, okay, well, they're going to do it because of this. They're going to do it to this. Every once in a while, you'll get, teachers that do advocate for your kid because they get it and they will. And you're so fortunate if you have that, but that's not all the time.
No. And you're right. but they're not going to advocate for your kid coming on the box because your kid's a number. They'll advocate for your kid when you educate them on it first. So there's a process to it, you know. It's not easy, you know. None of it's easy. You know, they start off as numbers. You know, same thing as me. Hockey, you're like, oh, I'm just a number. You know, they're like, oh, the X, Y, and Z. That's a whole new rabbit. Oh no, they don't give a shit who we are, or what we do for our body. You know, the school doesn't either. It's a business. You know, they're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart. You know, most of those teachers are teachers because they enjoyed school and it was easy. It's a business, start to finish. It's a business. It's ran as a business. You know, it's not too many businesses where you go in there and get what you want pretty easily.
Yeah.
When you start kicking and screaming.
No, totally. And it's hard. It's harsh reality. But if you are on top of it, you do advocate for your kid, you're going to get through it. We all get through it. And if we can get kids through it with less scars than maybe some of us have had, you know, we're doing our job. So it is about the education. And you guys might be listening to this podcast and be like, oh, this is interesting. I don't know that I know anyone with dyslexia. Or, oh, you know, I do. I know someone. You know, it's in my family. Again, remember, it's 1 in 5. It's hereditary. So if you're listening to this, what we want you to do is share it. Share it with as many people that you can, because you don't know who this episode could help. You don't know who this podcast can relate to. You don't know who out there needs to hear this. So like, rate, review, and share. And again, Brent, it's always so wonderful to see you and talk to you.
It's so much fun. Love going down the rabbit holes.
Yes, I know. He loves my rabbit holes because not only do we do this on the podcast, but sometimes he gets my rabbit holes on the phone. And so again, you know, guys, we are really enjoying doing this, but we're also doing it because we want to change the dyslexia, and dysgraphia and ADHD and what people are thinking of it and the narrative. So, you know, thank you again for joining Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed, and we'll see you guys next week.